Good morning, Broncos country. This is Legends of Mile High, and I'm Thomas Hall, your host. And we are going to talk about the NFL draft. Why not? It just happened. First round of the draft started last night, and if you were up, saw some pretty crazy, I would say, kind of crazy things happen in the draft, and we're going to talk about that and how it's going to affect the Broncos, who are finally going to be on the clock tonight in round 3. So that's that's what we have in store for all the listeners this morning, NFL draft wise. How's that first round affecting players available for the Broncos, and also how it affected a potential trade for some of those wide receivers that are out there that have been rumored to be traded by the Broncos. But before we jump into that, let's check into the chat, see who's here. We got David Youngkin coming in bright and early this morning saying, "Good morning, Thomas. Houston had a great day one. We are on the clock tonight, right?" Yes, we are. Yep, the Broncos are on the clock. And but unless they trade up, they're not going to be picking for a while. So you're going to have to wait and watch. But at least it's a faster time. It's quicker to get to the Broncos this time. So going to be shorter time limits between each round. So it'll be there soon enough. Thank you very much. Thanks for coming in this morning, David. Got Jason O'Neill coming in. Good morning, Thomas. Good morning, David. I'd be curious to know if the big board has changed at all and who may be there at pick 67. I hope that center is addressed and that player can start day one. Yeah, absolutely. I've been talking about that. That's a huge need. And we are going to address that because I do think the board fell quite favorably for the Broncos when you're talking about interior offensive linemen. So absolutely. We're going to jump into that pretty soon too. So thank you, Jason, for being here. Appreciate it. We got Jeremy Sean coming in saying, "Morning, Thomas. Is it our turn yet?" Yeah, it was a pain to watch last night for sure. Just watching everybody else take those picks after picks, and not being able to see the Broncos do anything. But it was a pretty big stretch to think that they were going to get into the first round. So they would have to trade it quite a bit to get there. And I just don't think they had the stomach for it. But we can talk about the receivers and why that didn't happen. So we'll talk about that in a second. And we got Jesse Hilborn coming in this morning saying, "Good morning, everyone. Well, that was really not easy to sit and wait all night. Now just going to sit and wait through today." Yeah, that's funny. I was just saying that it's tough to know that your team's really not going to have a chance to pick and then just wait and wait and wait and see everybody else taking these exciting players, young players who the Broncos unfortunately had no shot at. So, but thank you for coming in this morning, Jesse. Appreciate it. Got Dave Glassman coming in, checking in this morning. Good morning, Dave. Appreciate you being here. Thank you so much. And of course, the legend, Michael Ronquillo's checking in this morning saying, "Good morning, Thomas Hall on Legends of Mile High. Go Broncos and Buckham." Yeah, thank you, Michael, for being here. Really appreciate it. I'm here by myself, so I'm having a tough time trying to keep track of who's gives stars from Facebook and who doesn't. I'm assuming you did because you always do. So thank you so much, Michael. Appreciate it. And thank you for being here. And then Michael's coming back in. Broncos is finally going to draft players. Absolutely. This is the day where we are going to see some drafted players by the Broncos. So it's I'm ready. I'm ready for it. And then Beach Bum 63 is coming in. "Quick question. Do you think a run on cornerbacks will happen in round 2? And then he also says good morning. So yeah, well, it's possible. I hope there is. And we'll get into that in just a second. Why I think the first round played out pretty well for the Broncos. And then Michael's coming back in with a comment about Bijan Robinson became the first Tucson player to be drafted in the first round of the NFL draft. First player born in Tucson. I didn't know. That's a nice piece of trivia. I know that you're from the beautiful state of Arizona. I think Tucson's a beautiful city. So yeah, it's Yeah, that's great. Cute, good little trivia there. I'll try and keep that locked up in there. So if I ever run into that trivia question, I'll have it and I can thank you for it. So thank you very much for that, Michael. Appreciate it. Yeah. So the first round of the draft actually fell quite well for the Broncos for two reasons. One, there wasn't a big run on wide receivers early, and that affected how anyone was going to offer anything to the Broncos for Jerry Jeudy. So if you're a fan of Jerry Jeudy and you wanted him to stick around, then that was a pretty good sign to see that the first wide receiver wasn't taken until I think 20th by the Seahawks, right? That was the first one, and then four or three right after, and that was if it had fell if the wide receiver run started early, I think you would have seen some phone calls going into the Broncos war room for a trade for Jerry Jeudy. But since that didn't happen, I think Jerry Judy's safe. You might see some chatter about Cortland Sutton, but I don't see that either now. I think that the teams aren't desperate. They didn't get desperate for wide receiver. They waited. They got him later. I think that you if you are happy with Sutton and Judy staying on the Broncos, I think they're pretty safe at this point, just because of how the draft fell. And like I said, they waited till the last part of round one to start taking wide receivers. Now they may not. There may be some teams that don't like the receivers that are left available, and they start calling about Cortland Sutton. I think it's a done deal for Judy. I think they wanted a first round for Judy, and they didn't get it. So I think he's safe. But there might be some chatter for Cortland Sutton, but that I don't think is going to happen, just because, like I said, wide receivers waited till later. Teams got the teams that needed wide receivers got them in the back half of round one pretty late, and I just it fell that way. But which that was my theory, and I had no chance to test it because there wasn't a run early on wide receivers. But that's uh, that's interesting. You can't ever prove if you're right or not when things don't fall the way you think it's going to. So now we got David Young coming back in saying, "Quick question, Thomas: who will have the last say, Peyton or Peyton? George Peyton or Sean Payton?" That's an interesting thing. I we've had this kind of discussion on a couple different podcasts, right? Who's going to have the final say? Who's really in charge? And we kind of go back and forth. I think this draft will tell you really who has the final say based on the kind of the differences in how they both of them kind of go about the draft. Sean Payton's very aggressive, right? He wants to go after the players that he really likes and doesn't care about trading draft picks to do it. Now, with the few picks that the Broncos have, that may be a little more difficult. But if you see them trading up to go after somebody, then you could kind of lean towards Sean Payton as being in charge and having the final say. But if they trade back, more often than you would think, then maybe it's Sean Payton. But I think or George Payton. But I think it's a collaboration. I've been saying that there's a collaboration between them that's going to hopefully work well, like worked with Mickey Loomis and Sean Payton in New Orleans, because I think they both have a good eye for talent. And I just think Sean Payton, he's making the big bucks. They traded a lot to get him, and they're paying him quite a bit of money. So if I was to bet, I would say that Sean Payton has the final say. It's his team, really, right now. I mean, he's running it on the field, and he has quite a bit of control. So that would be my guess, but we're fixing to find out today, right? We're fixing to find out how these two work together, and I think like I said, if you see an aggressive move up for somebody, I think that you can kind of rest assured that Sean Payton is pretty much running the show as far as what the final say is and how aggressive they're going to be. But we'll see. I'm excited. I'm really excited for this draft. Keith Brugman's coming in this morning. Good morning, Keith. Appreciate you being here, of course. It's always fun to have you on the show. And Keith says, do we see a run on tight end in round 2, or do the Broncos have a good handful to choose from? Yeah, that's an interesting question. There could be a run. I mean, there's a couple still left that people thought might have gone in the first round, right? So we had the tight end out of Notre Dame there, Michael Mayer. I think he was kind of talked about round one. And then you got Luke Musgrave, who was kind of a borderline first rounder. So you got a couple good tight ends sitting out there. In my opinion, I think that's good for the Broncos. I think that how the first round of the draft went, I think for Broncos, who I think they need a center. I think that's their biggest hole on their roster after spending all this money on the offensive line to try and get that short up. They still have a weak link in the middle, and that's Lloyd Cushenberry. Now, I've talked about how Sean Payton probably liked Lloyd Cushenberry coming out of college, thinks that he can, resurrect his career or whatever. But the fact of the matter is Lloyd Cushenberry has been a pretty poor center when you compare them to the rest of the starting centers in the league. He's one of the worst. Now, can he get better? Absolutely. And I hope he does. I liked him coming out of college. But the problem is, if he does get better, he's probably going to go to another team, right? Because he's an unrestricted free agent. So center is the biggest need, really, for this Broncos offense, especially. But I think the team. But how the draft fell, I mean, there was not a real, for interior offensive lineman taken in round one. Now I know that they took he's offensive tackle, and they're projecting him to be on the inside, and that's Skronsky, right? He was kind of the interior lineman. If you think that they're going to move him to the interior, but he was really offensive tackle, right, in college, and that's a projection for him. But other than that, there wasn't really any big run on interior offensive linemen, which bodes well. So if there's still a couple good tight ends out there, like Keith Bergman said, that people are going to want to take early, that could keep pushing them down. I mean, there's still have Steve Avila is available out of TCU. You got Joe Tippmann from Wisconsin. You got John Michael Schmidt from Minnesota. Those are three pretty good players that are still sitting on the board. And if they get pushed down a little bit more, you might see the Broncos trade up to go after one. It just depends. Like you said, if there's a run on tight ends, and like you said earlier, cornerback, that could push them down even farther. And there's still some good cornerbacks available too, right? And I think I thought that the cornerback pick at 5 with the Seahawks was a bit odd. He didn't seem like he was a top 5 pick, but that's. Seattle has a very hit or miss first round history, right? They've taken some head scratchers in the first round, so maybe this is one of them. I don't know, but he could be a really good player for all I know. So who knows? Jeremy Shawn's coming in and talking about Schmidt, Sevilla, Tippmann, and Weipler in that order, then Stromberg. Yep. So yeah, there's still some available, right? I actually thought that there would be maybe 1 or 2 real interior offensive linemen taken in the first round. I thought that was, they were good enough to have that happen, but I don't know. There was some definite surprises in there. And Jesse Hilborn's coming back in saying, I want to see center, edge, and D line. Absolutely. Jesse, you really hit it. There's a few positions, center being number 1. I think they need to find their starting center of the future in this draft. If they can, that would be incredible, right? But they also need to find some depth at edge who can definitely turn into a rotational player for sure. And you're right, the D line is a little thin. My problem with the D line is it's not thin really in inexperienced depth. It's thin for the rotation of an experienced player. We're looking at the 2 real rotational players being second-year players, right? They were drafted last year. So my thoughts is if they could go out and get an experienced defensive lineman for that rotation, who doesn't have to be a starter anymore, but someone with experience, they may not have to really go after D-line in the draft this year. I think that they're going to need to in the future for sure find a starter who can come in to replace Mike Purcell for sure. But at this point in the draft, it's going to be depth, and I think they have an experienced depth now. So that's my thoughts on it. I actually think they're going to need to go running back. I think they need to have a complement to Perrine in the backfield, somebody who kind of is that change of pace a little bit, someone with, that has some explosiveness. So we'll see what happens, but I think that's a need as well. We got Ripped Eye coming in this morning saying, "Morning Broncos freaks." Well, good morning to you. Thanks for being here this morning. Appreciate it. And Keith is coming. Keith Brugman's coming back in, asking a question: who goes first between these two, Will Levis or Porter Jr.? I don't know, man. The fall for Will there was pretty bad. I mean, there were people saying he was going to be taken in the top 5, and he's still sitting there waiting in the second round. So I guess teams, did really good job with the smoke screens they were out there sending out. But yeah, it's interesting. I find it interesting that Joey Porter Jr. is still there. Only because the Steelers, with the kind of Joey Porter connection and them needing a cornerback, I thought maybe they would stand pat and wait for him to fall to them, but they didn't. They traded up and went for an offensive tackle who actually some people were kind of surprised that was taken that early. So that's interesting. But all of that really bodes well, right? There's, people that need to have a cornerback. There's some still sitting out there. People that are teams that want a tight end. There's still some sitting out there. That's just going to push that interior offensive lineman down the board. But, at any moment in time, teams can go back to back on the offensive lineman and they'll be gone by pick 67. So it's it's one of those games where you just got to wait it out and see what happens. We got Jeremy Sean coming in saying edge, cornerback, or safety on defense, center, tackle, and tight end on offense. Absolutely. Yeah. And you're right. Those are some needs. I think offensive tackle of the future is a need. I would like to see them try and get somebody in this draft for that because, Garrett Bowles isn't getting any younger and he's had some injury history. I think they need a left tackle who's there for the future, but I also think they need someone for the rotation. Their only real kind of experienced guy and not even that experienced is Isaiah Prince. That's it really for offensive tackle. So they need to draft one or go find one in free agency that can fill in that rotation. It's a pretty thin rotation, both on the interior and on the offensive tackle position. So I think you're right on that offensive tackle. And Michael Ronquillo is coming in with a prediction of, I think centers will fly off the board before the Broncos picks. Well, I hope not. I hope that I hope, and I hate to say it, I hope you're wrong. I hope that they aren't. I hope that there's one just sitting there that fell to them. Like when Jerry Jeudy was picked, that was a surprise. People didn't think he'd fall to the Broncos, but that was early. Obviously, it was early in the first round. I'll keep my fingers crossed, Michael. I hope that doesn't happen, but we'll see. We'll see what happens, and I'm excited, man. It was kind of strange to sit and watch the draft, knowing that the Broncos aren't going to do anything. But at least I didn't have to stay up late. I moved out to the Mountain Time Zone, which is way better than staying up until midnight watching the draft. So we got Oppenheimer, or sorry, Opthenthian. I'm sorry, man. I need to start wearing glasses. I can't read the small print on this computer. But thank you so much for coming here saying good morning, Broncos country. I'm hoping we draft a studded edge if possible. I like Gregory, but he's a gamble. With 5 picks, this team's needs to draft need and not want. Yeah, man. That was the first move. Well, the second move that I did not like that George Payton made was bringing in Randy Gregory. He's not a reliable player. I mean, reliable to be on the field, right? When he's on the field, he's a pretty good player. And, if he can't stay healthy this year, they're going to, their contract is constructed that they can get rid of him after this year. So they do need to look at edge. I really like Browning. I think he's fun. I think he's a impact player if he can stay on the field too. But after that, there really isn't a whole lot. Benito still needs to, grow into that position. I do like Christopher Allen. I think he might make some noise in training camp this year. He was injured. He went right on to injured reserve. Didn't really do much at training camp because of his injury. So I like him a lot, but you're right. There needs to be a plan for the future. The only problem is edge is hard. It's hard to find a really good edge late, an impactful edge. I know that Elvis Dumervil is out there, Justin Houston. There's some that made it, but there's a large amount that are drafted that don't get, even make it on the team. So, I hope that they can find some surprises that pan out really well. Some of those, picks that were like, whoa, that was a great pick, 3 years down the road. And then we got Keith Brugman coming back in saying, Thomas, bring in the knowledge. Absolutely agree. This draft is setting up pretty for our Broncos. Yeah, I hope so. But, like Michael said, there could be a run on those players at any moment. They could just, teams can just go back to back to back like they did with the wide receivers, right? That was, those were the teams that were needing them and they waited and got them. And so that's interesting. Yeah. So thank you for that, Keith. And David is coming in with a comment about he would not be surprised if they went running back first and then center. Yeah, well, they could do that, right? They could. They've got back-to-back picks, so if that's what they do, then they're not worried about it. My feeling is, and I've been saying this for a while, and I don't have any proof. I don't. It's just kind of a feeling, but my feeling is that if they get who they want or someone that they really wanted at 67, I think they're going to trade back and get some more picks because they're still thin on picks. They need to be able to get some more arrows in their quiver in order to make moves for next year. And this year is pretty much is what it is, right? You can't make a lot of moves. You can trade a player or two maybe to make some of those moves, but it's pretty tough. But next year, the way Sean Payton is aggressive, they need to get some definite more picks so that they can make some of those moves and trades up. So we'll see. I still think that center's a big need, but like I've been saying, maybe Sean Payton thinks Cushenberry is the answer and he's not worried. I'm worried, and I think a lot of other people are. You spend all this money on the offensive line and still have one weak link when the offensive line is going to be highly important for the Broncos' success this year. Highly important. So yeah, we'll see what happens, but maybe you're right, and we'll know in a few hours. And there's a question coming in here from Pearl Heater. Is Allen healthy now? I believe he is. Yes, he was getting pretty healthy in training camp, and he wasn't doing a lot of work, but he was recovering. But he wasn't going to be on the team. They needed to put him on injured reserve to make some other moves. So I think he's healthy now. And whether he stays healthy, I don't know. That's the other question because he did struggle with injuries, but I really like him. I think he's going to be a solid rotational player, and hopefully he can build into something. Right? He can build into something more, so that maybe he is the replacement for Randy Gregory. I don't know. I just think we're going to see something from him this year that people may surprise the people. So. We've got Dan Hall coming in. Good morning, Dan. It's great to see you here this morning talking the NFL draft, answering questions. That's the best part. You guys are coming in with all these great questions, comments. I love reading them, and I love to, to banter back and forth, even though, we're not talking. We're just, I'm reading the comments, but I still like it. And it's good to see you, Dan. Kind of cool, he says, to see Kerry and Greg Penner in the draft room. It's a new era. Go Broncos. Yeah, that's been, I know that people have talked about this, right? The ownership and all of the, what you would say, turmoil, I guess. Now it's stable, right? And that adds a lot. It has been pretty rough. I mean, Elway was, kind of doing it by himself for a long time. There wasn't anybody else, to give him that collaboration that we're going to see now, right? Between the ownership and, these executives and George Payton and Sean Payton. That's just going to make it stronger, right? As long as they're not meddling, like the Jerry Jones and the Dan Snyders, they were meddlers, right? Someone who works well and can give that. There's been that was part of the problem, is having that unstable ownership and one person really kind of running the show. And now there's a little bit of checks and balances, a little bit of more collaboration, some smart people in the room all kind of coming together. So I think that is going to help turn the fortunes around for the Broncos. But the biggest thing to turn the fortunes around, in my mind, is Russell Wilson having a bounce back season. And that if he can't, then they're in even worse shape, right? If he's unable to play at a high level, they're stuck with him and that big contract. So he has to turn it around. But all these things are kind of coming together, and you're going to see the Broncos start to get back to their winning ways. That's what we're hoping for. And Keith, I love it. I like every player we've picked in the draft so far. Obviously, tongue in cheek. It's yeah. So far, it's been perfect. But yeah, it's I'm excited about. It's funny because usually I'm excited about round one, but now we're all excited about day two, right? Because this is finally the Broncos are going to be on the clock. I would be. I predicted that they wouldn't trade up, but the way the board is falling now, they may. I mean, I thought, but the reason I said that is I thought that there wouldn't be any players worthy of trading up for that they really needed. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. But there's still some, some players out there that may be taken early. Like, I mean, you got Hendon Hooker still out there, right? You got two quarterbacks that people were talking about possible first round, and obviously Hendon Hooker probably would have been a first rounder had he not gotten injured. But that's going to push people down the board, right? You get a couple more quarterbacks that people want to take. That's going to help. You've got still got wide receiver needy teams. There's still some wide receivers out there who who are available that could push those guys down. You never know what's going to happen. You just don't. But man, if the Broncos could be lucky enough to see like a Joe Tippmann get pushed down and they don't have to trade up and they can take him at 67, that's the optimal for me, right? I don't think that like someone like John Michael Schmitz is going to get pushed down that far, but it would be fortuitous if that happens. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. But we got a couple people talking about who won the draft so far. Michael's saying that the Philadelphia Eagles won the first round. That's interesting. I mean, they had a pretty good draft. And then Opthian's coming back in saying, I love Anthony Richard for Indy. From one franchise with a revolving door at QB to another. I hope their drought is over as well as ours. Yeah, that absolutely. I mean, that's what it was supposed to be when they went out and got Russell Wilson, but it was just a mess, right? The whole Nathaniel Hackett and the injuries was a mess. So hopefully our drought is over as well. I don't really know who won the draft. There were some teams that were, I mean, Houston was aggressive, right? They they got who they wanted, traded back in to the number 3 spot and got another pretty solid player. So they were aggressive. That was interesting. I just think there were some head scratchers, right? Like I didn't. I mean, I don't know who really is going to be better between Devin Witherspoon and Christian Gonzalez, but that was a weird one for me. The Seahawks taking Witherspoon right away. I thought that was maybe a little early for him, but they've had a history of getting their cornerbacks that really excel. So who knows? I thought that was interesting, but again, that you never know about the first round. You just never know how it's going to unfold. Jesse Hilborn's coming with 67/68. Getting Tippmann and Harrison would change everything. Yeah, I think Tippmann's going to be a good pick if they can get him. There's still a couple out there that'll be good picks. I think he could probably start from day one. Based on what I've read and seen, and he could be a day one starter. Now it's a little, rookie centers kind of sometimes struggle, but it would be great. At least someone to push Cushenberry and know that his seat is pretty hot, because I know they went out and got Kyle Fuller, but that's a 1-year deal. I don't think they expect him to be the starter, and I don't think they expect him to be around. I think he's a depth player. So yeah, it's I really like Tippmann. I hope he's there and they don't have to trade anything to get him. And we got Keith Bergman coming back in saying Texans pushed all their chips in the pile, but I'm not sure about their hand. It's not a royal flush, in my opinion. Yeah, they did. I mean, they went all in, right? They got a new coach. They wanted to turn this thing around, and they went and got the quarterback, and then they got a defensive player. So, I think the CJ Stroud seems like a pretty good quarterback to me. Like they might have their quarterback of the future. I don't know, but I still think they've got a lot of roster holes. They still are going to struggle. And it's going to take them a little bit of time to turn it around, but you're right. They did push their chips in the middle. So, yeah. And David Youngkin's coming in. We are in the toughest division, so we need a great pick at 67 and 68 to stay competitive. Yeah, that's what I've been saying for a long time. The Broncos have missed on so many draft picks. They didn't, in those later rounds. other teams like the Kansas City Chiefs, there's a couple reasons why they're good, but one of them is that they have gotten lucky and got impact players in the third, fourth, and sixth rounds in the last decade. And the Broncos have missed. They've missed on a lot of those players. I mean, Justin Simmons is the only kind of later round pick that you could point to that really panned out that is still playing for the team, right? That were impact type players. And you're right. They have to nail these two picks, and I would say they have to be better than we would assume that they would be for a third round pick, right? They have to be at least one of them has to, turn into an impact player. That's the only way the Broncos can really turn this around is to nail those later picks and at least get one or two here and there that turn out to be impact players. Because that's been their downfall in the draft, is they've drafted a lot of these players late who didn't really work out for them well, right? They just weren't good enough to really even make. Some of them, got cut, but that's the problem. You got to get those impact players, and it is luck. I mean, I know that they put a ton of effort into these, draft. I mean, they're the experts, right? The NFL personnel, they're the experts. They do a lot of testing. They know what they're doing. But if you look at the numbers, to hit on an impact player in the third, fourth, fifth round, it's a lot of luck. You get lucky. You never know who's going to pan out and who isn't. So we got Michael coming in saying, great show today. Thomas Hall and Legends of Mile High. Go Broncos and Buckham. Thank you, Michael. Appreciate that. Really appreciate that you're here this morning. I know it's bright and early Friday after staying up late to watch the draft, so I appreciate you being here, and I appreciate that comment. Thank you so much. And Keith's coming in. Thomas, what pick to the Chiefs, Raiders, or Chargers scare you the most? Well, I mean, the Chiefs have been pretty good at drafting, lately. So, I don't know how they're going to pan out or whatever, but I felt like the Raiders kind of reached a little bit. That's a good player, but that they got, and I can't remember his name. I'm sorry. Let me just look here. Anyway, I think that guy could have had a little later. It seemed like a reach at the time. And then the Chargers went out and got themselves a wide receiver, Quentin Johnson, who I think is a good player, right? He's big. He's, one of those, kind of bigger wide receivers that they like a Vincent Jackson that they've had before and stuff like that. I don't know, but for me, it's like the Chiefs went out and got an edge rusher really to go with their good interior pass rush with Chris Jones. If I was going to say the one that scares me most, it would be that one, right? Because they already have a solid team in place where they can bring him in and really get him up to speed without letting him sit too long. Probably he's going to be able to get in and pass rush. So if I was going to say anybody, it'd probably be them, just because that's they've been pretty good at drafting, so they might have hit on somebody. I still think that was he took him a little early, but they've got a good complement to go with that edge rusher. So I just hope that the Broncos offensive line can hold up against the rushers from the Chiefs. But yeah, that's probably the one I would say is that Felix. I can't remember his last name. Yeah, Felix Azoma. Yeah, that's who it is. Thank you very much. Kevin Gray's coming in saying, morning, Thomas, Broncos country, salute, Denver Broncos for life, Mile High Huddle for life. Thank you. Thank you for that. Thanks for coming in, Kevin. Appreciate it. And then we've got someone coming in, Lambo, UK. Hi from England. Do you think we trade up into the second round? Well, thanks for being here, and thank you for coming in from England. Appreciate it. I can't wait to go visit England. I've never been to the UK, and I want to go visit England and Scotland and Ireland, just check it all out. So thank you for coming in this morning. Yeah. If they had more picks, I would say yes. I would say they definitely are, but they just really have that, so few picks to really make a lot of noise. I don't know. I'll say if the interior linemen start to drop, I think you'll see them maybe jump up and get one. They may make a trade and jump up and get one. If there's a run on the offensive lineman, the interior offensive lineman early, and there's no way for them to really get up that far into the early part of the second round, then I don't think he will. But I already made my prediction. They're just going to sit at 67 and wait to see how it falls, because there's still some good players out there. So we'll see. But if they had a couple more picks, I would say yes. But they just don't have enough in their arsenal to do it. So. And then Opthian's coming back in, kind of reiterating what I said. The fact about the Chiefs is that they have a winning culture, and that's been missing in Denver for far too long. Peyton has his work cut out for him. Absolutely. You're right. That's yeah, the winning culture needs to come back. And I've talked about this, written about this, like the fact that you even have to maybe get rid of some of the players, even if they're good players that just don't have that winning culture in their mind, and how it's done to really get back to their winning ways. It's possible. So yeah, definitely. And I hate to say it because I can't stand the Chiefs, but you're right. They have a winning culture, good coach, good quarterback, good team, and they've done pretty good in the draft. They've hit some pretty good later rounders. So and Keith's coming in, welcoming our Bronco brethren from across the pond. So thank you, Keith, for that. And yeah, welcome, Lambo. That's great to see you this morning. So. And we've got Isaiah Stacks is coming in. What was the biggest surprise from yesterday? Yeah, I thought I was a little bit surprised that the Texans traded back up to number 3, or traded to number 3 to get a defensive lineman, right? Or to get a defensive player. That was interesting to me. I'm a great player. Don't get me wrong. Like I guess people think he was the best player in the draft, but it still was a surprise. I mean, they just taken their quarterback who that they needed, right? They needed to get that quarterback and I think they like CJ Stroud a lot, but jumping back up to 3 to get that defensive player was a surprise to me. And I know people predicted it. Some people predicted that they would do that, but it's still, it still was a surprise like that. And I think they gave up too much for it. I think they gave up too much for it, but the guy's a good player. So maybe they that's going to pan out, but it just seems strange to me. That was a surprise. But the other one was the offensive tackle from Pittsburgh, trading up to go get that offensive tackle. What, I don't know. That was a surprise to me. He seemed like that could have been that as a player that could have been had at their original pick, trading up to get him. But I think there were rumors out there that another team really wanted him, so that they went ahead and did it. But there was a lot of smoke screens this year. A lot of people talking, a lot of things that didn't pan out so far in the draft. So I think the teams did a good job this year to trick other teams into thinking that they wanted somebody that they didn't really want. So who knows what happened, but that was a bit of a surprise. Those two, the trades up for those two was a bit of a surprise to me. As far as players that were had, yeah, I don't know. I mean, these teams are good at what they do. So it's I can't say that I didn't like a player that I thought was taken too early, but we'll see how they pan out. We'll never know. So. And then Keith's saying that he was shocked at the number of trades in a draft. I didn't think that was talent heavy at the top. Yeah, there were a few trades early, and yeah, you're right. Even before the draft began, right? The Panthers trading up a bunch of picks, a lot of value to get up there into the number 1 spot. And then there were a few other trades. Yeah, it was an interesting draft this year. It definitely was, and most of it because Denver wasn't in play. So it's that was a bit of a surprise too. And then we've got Riptide coming back in. Terrell Davis, best Denver pick ever. We will never get that value again. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say. The Broncos have had a history of getting, these really good late round picks. You got Shannon Sharp, another Hall of Famer in round 7. That was a heck of a value. You got Carl Mecklenburg coming in in the 12th round, back when they had 12 rounds of the draft. That was tremendous value. Tom Nalen, another, who I'm supporting for the Hall of Fame. I think he's a Hall of Famer, 7th rounder. There's been some really good late round picks by the Broncos. So I'm hoping that Terrell Davis or that Tom Nalen or that Shannon Sharp, is in this draft for the Broncos. And we look back and say, wow, they didn't have a first round pick, but they still got some great value. Dominique Martin coming in this morning. Good morning, Dominique. Thank you for being here. Saying, hey, Tom. Hey, Broncos family. We are ready for the third round. Mile High Huddle for life. Terrell Davis was a monster, Rip Dye. Yes. Yeah. I mean, the thing about Terrell Davis, he was a perfect fit for what Mike Shanahan and Alex Gibbs and that line was trying to do. It was, I'm one of those players, people that say his vision was, akin to like O.J. Simpson. He was one of the better top running backs as far as vision go of any in history. That's my feeling. That's why he was so good. He knew where to hit the hole and when to hit the hole in that zone blocking scheme. It was just a perfect marriage. And if he'd went somewhere else, he probably would have still been a good running back. But that was the perfect marriage, so to speak. Terrell Davis in Denver at that particular time, and that's why he's in the Hall of Fame. Got sorry, I'm probably going to butcher your name, but I'm just going to say to Tavo, thank you for coming in. I've not seen you in here before, so thank you for being here this morning. We're about ready to wrap up the show, so I appreciate you coming in. I'm Broncos for life. Do we have enough weapons to be in the playoffs this year? Every year is hurt time to see my Broncos go down. Do we feel we have enough firepower to compete with the Chiefs in the AFC West? Well, it's going to be, there's still some holes on this roster for sure. If Russell Wilson has a bounce back season and the Broncos can stay healthy, they can compete in the AFC West. And I know that's a big if, right? That's saying a lot, there's a lot riding on that, but they can. I mean, that's exactly, that's how it has to unfold. Russell Wilson has to be returned to his old form, and they have to stay healthy. Those are two of the biggest reasons why the Broncos were down last year. But you have to look at, they competed well with the Chiefs when they played, even when their roster was depleted, so I think that they can. I think that they will. I don't know if they're going to be Super Bowl contenders. It depends on just how big of a bounce back Russell Wilson has and how they can hide their kind of deficiencies this year that they still have to. I mean, if they don't get a center, that's a deficiency that they've got to figure out how to kind of hide, right? And still play at a high level, right? They still have some issues, some issues on the defensive line with that rotation. Edge rushers have to stay healthy. If they stay healthy, that's going to be a great complement and a pretty good defense. But yeah, it's tough to say, but I think they can if those two things kind of pan out. Russell Wilson's bouncing back, and even without getting a great player in the draft, right? Even without filling any of those needs, I still think they can. It's health and Russell Wilson are going to drive this train. I think they've got a good running game that's going to really help with that. And I think their defense is still going to be pretty solid. I'm not a big Vance Joseph fan, but I think they've still got their good players. If they can stay healthy, I think they're going to be able to compete. Could be wrong. I was wrong last year. I thought they were going to be Super Bowl contenders, and they just, it was a mess. It was a mess. But everything's kind of in place now. Ownership, they got a good coach. They've got a good quarterback. They've got, solid players as starters. The depth is concerning to me. They still have to fill in some depth pieces, but if they stay healthy, the depth won't be as important. So thank you for that question. All right, I'm going to wrap it up. Thank you very much for being here. Jeremy, Sean, you're going off to Mexico. Have a great time, man. That's great. Enjoy. But yeah, hopefully we all have a good time at the draft. But thank you everybody for being here. Appreciate it. I know I didn't get to everything I wanted to talk about, but I've got to jump off here, and I will be on. I'll be on hopefully tonight, a little bit of the War Room for a little bit, Mile High Huddle War Room. So don't forget to tune into that tonight. And then on Saturday, Ron White and I are going to wrap up this draft in a nice little bow. Right. It's going to be the end of the day. All the draft is done. Orange and Blue View is going to bring it all together, wrap it up. So I look forward to that. So join me on Saturday and join Mile High Huddle tonight in the War Room. It's going to be fun. And if you want to hit me up on Twitter, Thomas Hall NFL. Yeah, I'm doing a lot of stuff about trading, a lot of value stuff. So if you want to talk about the draft, or you want to talk about how it's unfolding or anything, you want to talk about history, hit me up on Twitter. But thank you very much for being here. I appreciate everybody that came in. I appreciate the support. If you gave Facebook stars and I didn't see it, I'm sorry. I'm here. There's no one here in the background watching for that. But if you did, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And we will see you next week. Thank you so much.